So Cocaine Bear is a movie that recently became something that we were aware of because of the very, very unique marketing campaign behind this film. We know that recently Universal has been putting out a lot of genre films, but Cocaine Bear came literally out of nowhere towards the end of last year when we first started to see previews for this. But just based off of the name and the premise alone, it almost became a must watch film that we just had to go see. What the hell is this even about? What are we talking about? A bear on cocaine out in the wilderness killing people. I mean, you talk about a premise movie. This is the true definition of a movie that's just all premise. And then we finally got a chance to see it, to see how they executed upon that premise. And so both of us got a chance to check it out this past weekend. With all of that out the way, I will pass it over to you, man. What did you think about Cocaine Bear?
I had a blast in the theater watching this movie. I think I very much knew what I was getting myself into, as a lot of us did going into watching Cocaine Bear. I think one thing that the marketing for this movie does so well is just selling you on that. Like you said, it's very much a premise film, and I think they do a good job getting butts and seats to see the movie. I remember looking at movie times for this, and it was a lot of tickets being booked up for this movie in different show times in the theaters. I think I went on Friday, and man, it was legit packed. So I think they did a good job, I think, of getting people to believe in something that wasn't one, it wasn't fantasy. Two, it wasn't a reboot. It was a brand new idea in a comedy that, again, I did not expect that many people to be in that theater, but they did a good job. But man, this movie is absolutely ridiculous and crazy, and all the things I think that people expect it to be for the most part. This is by far not a perfect film by any means. The characters, you don't care anything about them. There's probably not enough Cocaine Bear in it, but the moments where Cocaine Bear is in the movie I find myself, are the moments that I absolutely enjoyed myself. There are so many small things about this movie and the way that it's directed, in the way that the jokes are supposed to land, that had me dying in the theater. Again, I recognize some of those things weren't going to be funny to everybody, or wasn't going to make everybody laugh, but man, I found myself laughing quite a bit throughout the runtime of this film. I will say there's a couple laughs in here, right, where that didn't feel necessarily funny. So everything's not going to be funny in a funny movie, and it is what it is. And I think some jokes just end up falling flat. But again, there's a lot of sequences in this film that had me dying, man. I think the cast was funny. Again, unfortunately, there are all these different plot points happening in the forest with the cocaine bear. All these different groups of people have different storylines, and unfortunately, none of them end up being very interesting at all, or they never really end up wrap up in a satisfying way. And I think that's one of the problems with the film. But if you came for Cocaine Bear, which I came for Cocaine Bear for, I think you'll have a good time, or you're able to, overlook some of those things. I think within the plot of this film, and just be like, it could have been better, but because of some other things were still funny. I think you're able to enjoy the film. So yeah, man, I had a blast in the theater. Not a perfect movie, but man, I think I got mostly what I came for.
So I just want to start and say that I think Universal as a studio has been doing a spectacular job over the past year in terms of getting original low budget movies in theaters and actually getting people to show up for these movies. They're really on a hot streak right now. I think in terms of the performance of their films, we're coming off of a smash hit Megan, which is also like a silly film with a really crazy premise. Violent Night was super successful over the holiday season, also distributed by Universal. And now I think for the third time in a row with Cocaine Bear, of all movies, they have acquired another win, because what the hell is this? What the hell is this film? What is this even supposed to be? And I found it so interesting that the entire premise of this movie, in actuality, is based on true events. There was a legitimate incident in the 1980s in which cocaine fell out of a plane and a bear, a grizzly bear, guzzled it all down. Now, of course, he did not go on a killing spree and turn it into a slasher film thereafter. The bear did OD and die on the cocaine, but what a way
Yeah,
to just take something that actually happened in real life and say, hey, you know what? We can do something with this. We can make this a really fun film. And that's
yeah,
exactly what Elizabeth Banks did here. And I have to say that she's had a really, really successful acting career, and she's now turned into a director. This is her third feature film, and I think she's had a lot of mixed results thus far, but I
Mhm.
just love the fact that she is taking the risks to give us something just new and different and original, because we're in the landscape of many reboots and remakes and sequels and franchises and IP. So to come into a movie theater experience on a Thursday night, I saw this in LA. Similarly to you, the crowd was raucous. Everybody was so ready to see this movie. Everybody was primed and ready to go for Cocaine Bear, because if you show up to a movie with this type of title, you pretty much know what you're getting into. And the studio
Mhm.
also knew what they were getting into, because it's risky to call your movie this. They talked about that certain marketing campaigns, they couldn't even explore them because of the fact that cocaine was in the title. It's a really explicit thing to just put out there like that. But again, it's a big swing for the simple fact that they know what their target demographic is going to be, and they're going to deliver on the premise that they set out to achieve. And for me, I think that this film half works after seeing it. I think that I really enjoyed the points in which the bear was present and was on
Best
cocaine. I
parts.
mean, that's the stuff you want to see. And when the bear was on screen, I'm like, I'm totally here for it. There's a sequence which they tease in the trailer that turns into like a car chase ambulance sequence, which is just unreal. It's just ridiculous what happens in that sequence. It's the best part of the movie. The problem with Cocaine Bear is the fact that the bear is not in it enough. They needed
Mhm.
more. They needed more bear. That's really the simple fact of the matter, that they needed more bear, and the characters that they do stand up, the players that we follow, none of them are all that interesting, and they also probably had too many. I think if you just focused
Absolutely.
with the cast and had a smaller cast, like really focusing on Carrie Russell, because she's always gonna really knock it out of the park, and maybe a couple
Mhm.
of other supporting players, I think you would have had a stronger film, because with like all of the people who were sort of disparate and spread out, what they were trying to achieve was this one inciting incident with this bear that's coked up, bringing them all together. And I understand that you want to try to connect those dots between these different narratives and these different characters. What ended up happening is that it essentially turned into like a Friday the 13th movie, where you don't give a fuck about anybody on screen. You just want to see the kills. And I didn't expect that this would turn into a slasher movie, but it essentially is that. And
Mhm.
because of that, because this film is trying to toe the line between comedy and horror, I found that maybe the tonality was just a little bit off. Sometimes it felt a little bit difficult to know when to laugh, to know when to take something serious. I think the tonality was just kind of all over the place. And if they just maybe focused in on the campy nature of what this exactly is supposed to be, it probably would have been more successful for me. But listen, beyond that, I think by all accounts, you were getting exactly what you pay for with a movie called Cocaine Bear. This movie was reportedly budgeted at $35 million. I would bet that maybe half, if not three-fourths of the budget probably went to cocaine. They probably purchased real cocaine to include in this movie. And that's where all the money went, because the bear and the CGI didn't always look that great. And so
Yeah.
we had just the remaining funds left over to get that VFX team in there. But beyond that, man, you really can't ask for more. This film, as I mentioned, has been successful so far. This is like the third straight hit for Universal in terms of an original low budget film taking over theaters and having a very, very well received opening box office. It actually came in second place. It opened to $23 million, which I
Mm.
think certainly surpassed all expectations. It really wasn't that far off from Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which pretty much plummeted in its second weekend. What do you attribute this success to? The fact that people actually wanted to go to the movies to see this. They actually showed up, got out of their houses. They didn't want to wait for streaming. They didn't want to wait for Peacock. They said, yeah,
Mhm.
we're going to go out, because similarly to you, when I was booking tickets Thursday, Friday, like movie theaters were pretty much packed. Like it weren't that
Yeah.
many seats left. And I was
Mhm.
pleasantly surprised to see that. So what do you attribute the success of this movie to?
Man, I think it's a couple things. I think one thing is a lack of comedies. We don't have many comedies to just go out to the theaters to watch anymore. The Hangovers are gone, the Step Brothers are gone, Pineapple Express, all those films, that the renaissance of those films are no longer existent. And I think there's a hunger, a little bit for that. And I think this film kind of proves that there's a hunger. Two, the premise is ridiculous. Who like I just know so many people who looked at the trailer and was like, That looks so stupid. I can't wait to watch it. I know so many people that did that because, like, nobody, we haven't had a ridiculous, like you said, premise film like this in a long time either. That's why, like, movies like this, like you said, Megan, like, something about these are so different than the other content that we've been ingesting in the past couple years, that it's just it feels refreshing to people. So they're like, oh man, that looks like a good Friday night comedy movie. Let's go and see that. That sounds ridiculous. Three, I'm sure there is a undisclosed amount of people watching this movie who probably actually do cocaine on a regular basis. And they were like, okay, that movie's for me. I need to go watch it. But all of those things, man, I really do think there's a plethora of things and reasons why people went to go see this movie, and that just happens to be some of them. But man, it's they got butts in the chairs, I tell you that.
Yeah, Universal, they were in on the joke from the very get-go. They knew what they had on their hands because every few years I feel like we get these movies with these crazy weird titles that elicit some type of reaction. I remember Snakes on the Plane was a whole internet phenomenon when it came out just
Yes.
because you see the title and you're like, "Wait, what?" And then you see the trailer and it becomes equally campy and crazy. Sharknado was a whole thing. When you heard that title, you're like, what the fuck is Sharknado? What is that going to be about? I even think about like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It's just stuff like that. When you have a really genius sort of campaign that can help fuel people to go see something just based off of curiosity alone, which I feel like a lot of people just wanted to see what this was going to turn out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Cocaine Bear. That's a ballsy title to have for your movie. I think people just wanted to go see what this experience was going to be. And it looks to be that most folks were pleasantly thoughtful and enjoyed it a lot, which, again, I think Universal set out to achieve that from the very top of this, from this whole experiment. So
Mm-hmm.
kudos to them. I hope to see more stuff. I know you saw the trailer for Strays, which is going to come out later this year, that crazy
Yep.
talking dog movie with Jamie Foxx and Will Ferrell. That's another one coming from Universal. They have just a bunch of crazy shit down the pipeline. I can't wait to see. Definitely, again, kudos to them. But folks, those are our thoughts on Cocaine Bear. If you've checked out this movie, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.